Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We are joined by leaders from around the state to discuss one of the most pressing issues that we're facing in our state and country right now. Thank you so much to Representative Sandoval, Sheriff Nanos, Mayor Nicholls, and Directors Glover and Clark for joining us, and Senator Fernandez. Before we begin, I do want to say a word about the driver that killed 8 people in Texas yesterday outside of a migrant shelter. Early reports indicate that this was an intentional attack, and my heart goes out to the families of those who were killed, the injured, and the staff at the shelter. There should be no room for hate in our country, but sadly that is not often the case. We must come together to condemn any act of violence or hate against migrants. And if anybody attacks migrants in Arizona, I promise that we will prosecute you to the fullest extent of the law. Now I'd like to outline how the state of Arizona will approach the lifting of Title 42. For the past 3 years, the federal government has used Title 42 as a temporary solution to a permanent problem. On May 11th, that will come to an end. As a result, Arizona communities will once again be responsible for managing the influx of migrants entering our southern border. Let me be clear. The state of Arizona stands ready to assist our border communities and NGOs in any way that we can. When I took office, I made it a priority to visit the border and meet with leaders on the ground in their communities. In the first 100 days, we visited both the Tucson and Yuma sectors, including a tour of the Mariposa Port of Entry with Secretary Mayorkas. During these trips, I heard directly from Border Patrol agents who struggle to keep staff. I heard from elected officials whose requests have gone unanswered, and I've heard from humanitarian leaders who are overworked and overwhelmed by the responsibility that's been put on their shoulders. Now, with Title 42 set to expire, I'm afraid these challenges will only get worse. And I'm afraid the federal government is unprepared to meet the demands of the expected influx. That's why today I'm announcing the state of Arizona's Title 42 preparedness approach. Our 5-point approach is based on what we heard directly from these communities and is focused on public safety and humanitarian support. Additionally, our approach will use the state tools we have at our disposal to help border communities. We'll use all the state tools we have. Let me be clear, I will not politicize the border. I will not prioritize headlines and political stunts. I will work tirelessly to keep Arizonans and migrants safe and ensure a humane and orderly process. Our approach is informed by months of meaningful collaboration, hearing from partners on the ground, and tailoring our actions to their needs. As we manage a fluid situation, our state will continue with that approach. Our first point is public safety. I've directed the Arizona Department of Public Safety to assist local sheriffs and law enforcement in maintaining safety and security on Arizona highways and prevent harmful drugs like fentanyl from being brought into our state. I've also encouraged the federal government to double down on the approach outlined in Operation Blue Lotus and hope that they will continue to crack down on any and every drug trafficker who thinks they can exploit this potential humanitarian crisis for their own gain. Second is partnerships. As I have said many times, the only way out of this is through collective partnership. That's why my office has spent months developing and strengthening partnerships with NGOs, federal agencies, local governments, and tribal communities. We will rely on these relationships and the open lines of communication that have been created to monitor the situation at the border and ensure tailored action is taken where needed. To best facilitate this communication, my team is standing up a joint information command where our partners can share updates, raise concerns, and coordinate responses. 3 is transportation. My administration will continue to assist with the transportation of migrants to their final destination. DEMA will assist, provide, and coordinate the best and safest mode of transportation for migrants. By doing this, we can mitigate the impact of the increased migration on our border communities. We will make sure the most cost-effective method of transportation is being used and that there is clear coordination between sponsors and NGOs. 4th is emergency shelter. DEMA will play a similar role ensuring migrants are sheltered while they are awaiting transportation out of Arizona. And finally, fifth, as I have done before, I am prepared to take executive action. We will activate state resources as needed and provide access to emergency resources if deemed necessary. That includes, but is not limited to, sending additional National Guardsmen to the border. While we are prepared to take state action in any way that we cannot manage this influx alone. Without much more robust action from the federal government, the current situation will only get worse. I've sent letters to President Biden and Secretary Mayorkas outlining specific actions that need to be taken. As of today, we have not received an adequate response. We will continue to relentlessly pressure the federal government until we truly get the resources we need to manage the expected influx. I want to express my gratitude to law enforcement, local elected leaders, and humanitarian organizations for their dedicated service to their communities. In particular, I want to thank Amanda Aguirre, Teresa Cavendish, Diego Lopez, Beth Strano, Gretchen Lopez, and the numerous NGO staff, city and county leaders who have been working tirelessly to tackle this issue. Although they couldn't join us today, I want to thank them for all of their hard work. The state of Arizona is ready to provide support during what will undoubtedly be a challenging period. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Yuma Mayor Douglas Nicholls.
Thank you, Governor, and good morning. I'd like to thank the Governor for bringing us together today to talk about these next steps, but also for her proactive nature. Before she got in office in December, her and I had an extensive conversation about the border, the migrant status in Yuma specifically, and the need for her to come to see the border, which she expressed a strong desire to do very soon. Sooner than later was her words. And within 100 days, in March, she did come to Yuma. She saw the border firsthand. She saw the process at which migrants are humanely handled, and the situation was currently, at that time, under control. And we brought together the local leaders to have a roundtable to discuss the different perspectives people had. And it all came down to this. This is a national issue, and the federal government leadership has failed to make good on this national issue. Time and time again, communities like Yuma step up. They step up to do great things to make sure people are taken care of, but this task is going to be too great. It's going to be greater than anything we have seen in the past. The influx has already begun. About a month ago, we had 300 people a day crossing the border in the Yuma sector. 2 weeks after that, we had 600. Yesterday, we had 1,000 people a day crossed just this Sunday. And this morning at 8 o'clock, there was already 500 people that have crossed into the Yuma sector. This is not stopping anytime soon, and is very troubling. And the governor has set up these systems in order to help make sure that our border communities can remain safe places to live, that they're not negatively impacted by this negative national discussion about an unsafe border. And her prioritization of transportation is extremely important. In Yuma, there are very limited options for general commercial transportation, and so to have the government step in is a necessary step. Unfortunately, it's the state government and not the federal government. My top priority every day is the citizens of Yuma. And in this crisis, what's good for the citizens of Yuma are also good for the state and the citizens of Arizona. I'd like to turn it over now to Representative Sandoval.
Thank you, Mayor Nicholls. Good morning, buenos días. I will be making my remarks in Spanish. Gracias a la gobernadora Hobbs por reunirnos a todos esta mañana para platicar sobre el tema tan importante que es el título 42 y las restricciones que van a terminar. Yo represento el Distrito 23, que va desde la ciudad de Goodyear hasta la frontera con San Luis, Arizona. Tuve la oportunidad de hacer una carrera de ayuda fronteriza este pasado fin de semana, el sábado. Fui con la coalición humanitaria Arizona-California, que es dirigida por Fernie Quiroz. Fuimos a dos partes de la frontera, con San Luis y México. En una parte de la frontera, la sección 22, vimos 30 inmigrantes del Congo, Perú, China, Brasil y algunos menores que no venían acompañados, que venían de Guatemala. En el otro sector, el sector 12, vimos aproximadamente 60 migrantes que estaban siendo procesados y transportados ordenadamente por la patrulla fronteriza cuando llegamos. Entiendo que este no es el caso en otras partes de las fronteras, incluso que esto no va a ser el caso más tarde esta semana en nuestra propia frontera, cuando se levante el título 42. Esto definitivamente podría poner una gran carga en nuestras comunidades fronterizas. Y una de las cosas que me dijo también el alcalde Jerry Anaya de la ciudad de Somerton fue que le gustaría ver más asistencia médica. Y también hablé con la concejal Carol Smith de la ciudad de Yuma, que trabaja en el Yuma Regional, el hospital, y expresó la misma solicitud, más asistencia médica. Durante el pasado, la situación de la fronteriza se ha polarizado y las palabras rara vez siguen acción significativamente. Y estoy feliz que ver que la gobernadora Hobbs se niega a jugar política y está dispuesta a tomar medios con un enfoque inteligente, personalizado, para ayudar a nuestras ciudades fronterizas. Gracias. Ahora les quiero presentar al Sheriff Chris Nanos, que va a decir unas remarcas.
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you for being here, and Governor Hobbs, thank you for having me. This is an opportunity I take great, not just pride, but take quite seriously. I was born and raised on the border, and I know too well the sufferings that go on both sides of that border. I will just say this simply, that I've said all along, this is a federal government problem. And for the state to have to take it on, for each county to have to take it on without funding, without any resources, without any housing or food or health care for these migrants, that's just not right. And to put that burden on the counties hurts me specifically, hurts my team specifically, because those funds could go to hiring more deputies, to hiring more corrections officers, to giving those raises that are needed greatly by my team and others out there in the communities. So it does impact us in a way that's not just financial, but more importantly, humanitarian. We all know that we can put all the uniforms you want on that border. We can put the sheriffs, highway patrol, our border patrol agents, 1,500 troops from the federal government. But we also know that's not the solution. The solution lies in the halls of Congress in Washington, D.C. And I think we all are getting a little tired of the partisan politics on such critical issues as gun violence, immigration, you name it. It's time that we hold those we elect to office accountable, that we make them stand up and do something, make an effort to reach across that aisle and get things done. Governor Hobbs, I thank you for not just your pragmatic response, but more so for your humanitarian belief that this is a humanitarian issue and we need to deal with it as such. So thank you for having me. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Director Glover, please, if you would.
Good morning. First, I want to start off by thanking Governor Hobbs and our elected officials that are here today. It shows that we're unified in our message and unified in the support of being able to address this issue, as well as being able to protect and be able to provide safety for our Arizona community. And that's of the most importance, obviously, to me. The Department of Public Safety is an agency that's here to assist, to be able to provide that overall protection and to provide that assistance that's needed for the border, for our communities and for the counties, and to help and assist the sheriffs in some of the requests and the search and rescue missions and the various standpoints that they need our assistance. We are there for them. We have their back. And so just want to say that this is, something that nobody can do alone. It takes a complete community effort to be able to do this. And I believe that that's why we're all here today is to show that it takes an effort for everybody to come together to address this issue. Again, it's something that is a federal issue, but we're here and we have a plan to support our community to be able to address this issue, and I think that that's what's most important. Again, the Department of Public Safety is here to assist and provide what's needed for our overall response. And with that, I will, again, thank you, Governor Hobbs. We'll turn it back over to her for closing remarks.
All right. Hello, everybody. We'll now move into Q&A. I will call on you. If we can please start with questions on topic to the press conference, and then we can move into general Q&A. I know everybody has lots of things they'd like to ask. So let's start.
Governor, what's your level of frustration with the federal government not acting on this issue?
It's incredibly frustrating. I came into office knowing that this was going to be a challenge we were going to face early on. Made it a priority not just to do the public events that we did, the border visits, the roundtables, but my staff has been having listening sessions. We've been doing, at this point, more than daily coordination with folks on the ground, and just really trying to elevate those concerns to the federal government. And we've just gotten an incredibly inadequate response to address the challenges that our communities are facing.
Can I ask what the response was?
Well, I mean, Secretary Mayorkas came out. I think that was great. He was able to hear directly from the nonprofit organizations that are providing support to these folks. But I mentioned the letter that we sent. We have not gotten a response to that letter that had very specific asks. I think we can make sure you all have a copy of that if you haven't seen it. But we haven't gotten specific answers to the things we're asking for that our communities need.
Stacey.
I wonder if someone, maybe Governor or Colonel, maybe you can address, I mean, some of these things I think the state is already doing, right? Like supporting border counties, transportation. So what specifically is changing because of the upcoming end of Title 42? Can you speak about like what more resources are being added?
We're increasing transportation. We're looking at sheltering options, and then just the additional public safety aspect, just making sure we're increasing the coordination there.
Like will more troopers be in those border areas?
I don't know the answer to that.
Just to jump in for a second. So we do have troopers that are working with the communities down along the border. So we have increased some of the active patrols as well as the search and rescue efforts. Equipment that is needed to be able to carry out those efforts are also being allocated to the border communities as well.
Is that quantifiable in any way?
That I can't give you a quantifiable.
Actually, a couple of things. I was going to ask you, would you please the transportation and the shelter system. The sheltering seems enormous. What do you envision that looking like at the very least?
We're working with DEMA on that. I don't know, Chris, if you want to.
Good morning, Alan Clark.
First, I'm sorry.
That's okay, ma'am. I've been called a lot
looking at
of
the
names.
sheriff.
I'm good. So, good morning, Alan Clark, State Emergency Manager. So, as far as the sheltering goes, naturally, when you think of a sheltering issue or problem or a task, it can be handled in multiple ways, right? We can go down and erect soft-sided facilities if we get to that level, or we can continue to work with the counties and the local NGOs to enhance their capabilities to do such. We can help move people around through our transportation modalities to decompress certain areas and move those to other areas. We can help them with staffing contracts through vendors and stuff like that. So there's a lot of different things that are in play, and there's a lot of different mechanisms that we're researching and will put into use as the demand signal shows.
One reason is that, as you know, that there's talk about Grenada, Mexico
Well, I don't think that's an answer to the problem we're facing. There is no question that the lifting of Title 42 on Thursday is going to increase the flow of migrants, legal migrants into the United States. And so that's what we're focused on right now, is addressing that immediate need and how we can respond to that.
All right.
Let me start with you, Governor. I appreciate all you're saying. Where's the money for all this going to come from? You know, heck, we haven't even settled on a supplemental budget. How much is all this going to cost?
Well, I don't have specific dollar figures. I know that we are looking for resources everywhere they're available. One of the specific asks we had from the feds was finalizing the shelter, the new FEMA shelter program, which is probably going to be a cost reimbursement situation, but they don't even have that finalized yet so that's, adding to the frustration. There was money appropriated in last year's budget. That's what's being utilized for the transportation. And there's funding remaining there.
Okay, let me ask a sort of related question. Come on back to the mic. Speak back there. It doesn't matter. It doesn't count. You mentioned increased patrols and everything else. DPS has a finite number of sworn officers. Given what additionally you're going to be doing, what is not going to get done? Are some roads just not going to be patrolled at night? Are some areas, down Division 9, down Sierra Vista? I mean, what's going to fall off the table here?
So it's not going to impact our patrols in other areas. What we're doing is just increasing the patrols and how we're actually managing the resources, especially those related to maybe specialty units being able to be available to also assist in that area. So it doesn't take away from the actual active patrols in some of the areas that we're concerned with in terms of high fatality type collision areas. Those are areas that are still being actively monitored and patrolled as well.
Question for the governor and then for Mayor Nichols. Governor, transportation, does that include transporting migrants out of the state? I think you're still doing it.
Yeah, we're doing that.
So where are they going to go? How much more is that going to cost?
That's been an ongoing effort, and we are connecting them with where they have support and sponsors, whatever their final destination is. And we've changed the program from the prior administration to make sure that we're getting folks there as efficiently as possible. I think before there were just buses going to Washington, D.C., and we're focused on getting them where they need to go.
And how many troops has Arizona received?
It's a small number. Do you remember?
We'll get back to you.
You don't know?
We do. I just don't remember it.
I'll get the number
Yeah.
to you. Frankly, administration's been a little wishy-washy on it, so I'll let you know.
Mayor Nichols, are you seeing street releases yet? How likely is that to happen in Yuma?
We have not seen street releases yet, but at the 1,000-person-a-day pace, and that ever increasing, it only takes a few solid weeks of that before we're out, and it could be sooner than that. It depends on how quickly DHS can decompress from the Yuma sector. That's been more and more difficult as in the recent past, decompression's been able to happen because not every sector was busy. Now every sector's busy, so decompression then has to be more internal, and DHS has a lot less resources internal. So once Border Patrol gets overwhelmed and the NGO is overwhelmed, then that's where we hit street releases.
Yes, right there.
Hi, this is for the governor and the mayor as well. Governor, you talked about you won't be afraid to issue executive orders if it comes to that. And Mayor, we talked about this when we spoke last week. The Border Patrol is worried that as many as 4,000 people could be coming across daily. How quickly is it going to, what are the what levels do things have to hit before you start implementing a more expedited deal over the border?
What we know is the situation is and will continue to be fluid. That's why we're in constant communication, so we know what the needs are and we can respond as quickly as possible. So we're going to continue that coordination to make sure that we're able to respond. And so I can't speak to hypotheticals, but we want to make sure that we're ready to respond when we need to.
Mayor,
I think that's spot on, because it depends upon a lot of things that are in constant motion. That if the NGOs get the ability to move people around or bring in other resources, that increases that capacity. Where we were when I declared my local emergency a year and a half ago in December of 2021, we had people weren't being released to the street, they just weren't being picked up because the system was overwhelmed. That would probably be more likely where we'll head if we hit to that 4,000 number.
So what does that mean for your city? If 4,000 people are just there and it exponentially adds on?
Well, that's definitely the scenarios we're running through. We've never seen anywhere close to this, and so we're trying to figure out exactly that answer. I wish I had the answers, and if anybody does, I'm open, but this is uncharted territory, and so we're looking for all the answers we can, definitely pushing on the federal government, but with the governor's plan, that helps to at least know we have a backstop here within our state.
Governor, a couple of questions. First, I'd like to get some more details on the transportation aspect. Is this just going to be asylum seekers like Governor Ducey was doing last year? Is this going to be all migrants, regardless of status, to other parts of the country?
It's legal migrants, but I don't know if you want to speak more to that.
Certainly. So, you know, when you look at this as a humanitarian effort, so we're looking at anybody coming across the border that needs help, we're going to try to help. We will take them, as the governor has pointed out, and it was actually her agenda item and pressing that, yes, last year we were moving people to Washington, D.C. Only and specifically, and under this governor, we've been asked to expand that to other states, also intrastate. So we will, as been mentioned, we will be helping with buses to move people from rural parts of Arizona to more populated parts of Arizona, and then further out of the state of Arizona as needed. So.
I'm not sure that answers the question in terms of, are these people who are applying for asylum, are these people who just happen to cross and are here, or what?
So if the people that are released by Border Patrol into our communities are the ones, and I apologize for not answering that directly. Again, we're going to help a human being. If they're released from Border Patrol, we're going to help that person.
And Governor, you mentioned executive actions, but doesn't really have any details of what kinds of actions you are willing to take. Can you elaborate on that?
Again, you know, the situation is fluid. We're continuing to monitor, and so if there is executive action we can take, that will be helpful. Potentially sending more National Guardsmen is one example, but it's why we're continue to be in constant communication.
Yep, right there.
Governor, question for you. Your approach is vastly different from the previous administration. I don't know if you have an update on what happened to all of those shipping containers, and I see that your priority is not on closing the gaps or building more fencing, and why is that?
The closing the gaps is a federal responsibility, and the reason the shipping containers aren't there anymore is because the federal government was going to sue the state to take them down. So they're down now, and we own them, and they're sitting in storage, and we're working on plans to repurpose them for things like housing and other ways they can be utilized to address other problems we're facing.
How much money was spent on that project that is it potentially wasted?
It was a lot of money.
I can get you that information, just shoot me an email. Yes, right there.
Sheriff, you've been very vocal about the staffing shortages and challenges that your own department is currently facing. How are you guys planning as far as it relates to the county?
Well, we work closely with our Border Patrol agents, and always have. I think Colonel Glover would say the same. You know, law enforcement's always worked together, particularly on the streets, where it needs to be happening, and that won't change. But Chief Modlin, who directs the Tucson sector, the largest Border Patrol sector, I think he has over 5,000 agents. A big job. We talk weekly, we talk daily. Whatever needs to be done, we'll help him, he helps us. But the one thing we're both very clear on, I do not want to be doing his job, nor should I, and he doesn't want to do our job, nor should he. This is really, to me, our federal government needs to figure it out. it's ironic to me how you can sit there and try to deal with those who are outside our walls, outside our borders, and yet you can't even come up with something as simple to deal with those who are already here, our dreamers. What is, I don't know, I give up. I don't know what's going on in Washington, but I'd challenge them, I'd ask you to do the same. Let's get some legislation that actually reforms our immigration process so that these who do want to come here lawfully can actually do so in less than 10, 20 years.
You all had mentioned sending National Guardsmen to the border. How many do you anticipate sending, and can you elaborate on what their role would be?
No, I can't. It's a tool we'll use if we need to, based on what's happening on the ground. So it's an option we have, but we haven't committed anything specific yet, and don't plan to until we know for sure if that's something that's needed.
Governor?
Oh, hi.
So there are 5 bullet points here, 5 sub-headlines: public safety, partnership, transportation, executive action, shelter. You haven't been able to provide any numbers about public safety, about how many troopers or new officers are going to the border, no numbers on how many new buses we're sending out of state, no details on executive action. Can you tell us anything about the shelters? How much emergency funding is available? How many beds are we going to need? How quickly can we get those up?
We don't know the numbers. Because we don't know the numbers. We don't know what the need is actually going to be. We're dealing a lot with speculation. There's going to be this many additional folks coming through. We know that today the shelters in Tucson are at capacity, and we're on Monday, and this is going to increase on Thursday. So we are going to respond to the need that is on the ground.
But you've got to have some projections, some kind of goals at least. How much would you like to put into this, if you could?
I don't know if you have more specifics on shelter.
No, ma'am. You addressed it, and again, one of the things it's gonna sound like I'm skirting your question or skirting it, but I'm not. The bottom line is we don't know. We don't know what those numbers are gonna be. If we had unlimited pots of money and unlimited resources, then we would say that we would use unlimited pots of money and unlimited resources. But we don't know exactly what that is. Remember, every incident or disaster or crisis starts at the local level. So we are partnering with the local level, who is trying to manage, who then is going to the county, and they're trying to manage, and then we're partnering with them. So the bed availability and all these numbers that you hear about are from the NGO and the county level right now, and we're in constant contact with them. But until we have exact numbers, we don't know what is exactly going to be needed, sir. Sorry.
And Governor, are you going to be asking for any, we're doing a budget right now. Are you going to be asking for any supplemental appropriation? We're allegedly passing budget in the next week or so. What are you asking for to fulfill these goals?
Yeah, let me just touch on the shelter. We know there's going to be additional federal resources coming from the Shelter Services Program. There's actually a very large pot of money, and one of our specific asks in the letter was to focus those resources on the border communities. Right now, we're in competition with all of the states for that funding, so that's one of our specific asks. That's going to be reimbursed, as far as we know. So we're gonna be relying heavily on that source of funding. And aside from that, you will see increased homeless funding in the budget. I will tell you that's not, the intent isn't necessarily to be used on this shelter. We shouldn't have Arizonans paying for something that's a federal government responsibility, and that's what our priority is going to be.
All right, guys, let's open it up to broader questions. I know everybody has a lot
Governor,
of
right
things to
here now.
get to. So can we, hold on, please. Howie, you have an additional?
I'm still wounded, so
I'm sorry.
taking a little bit of sympathy.
Okay.
Governor, when you did your State of the State, and when you did your budget, you said we are going to end the expanded voucher program, the expanded ESA. We're going to repurpose the money. Everything I can determine is you didn't get that. What went wrong? I mean, why are we still going to continue to have unlimited vouchers of hundreds of millions of dollars a year?
I think that we can agree that the voucher program is a drain on resources that should be directed at public education. But I didn't say we're going to end it. It is a goal, certainly. We put that in our executive budget as the goal, knowing that we would be in a place where we were going to have to negotiate. That's what we're doing.
So are we going to continue that?
Is
It's real simple. Is enrollment going to continue to be unlimited?
I'm not going to negotiate the budget here.
Governor, right here, please, not real talk and show with you. May 11th is going to be the deadline, as we all know, ma'am. And I was wondering, what is your bucket list? Like, after this is what's happening with Biden, have they been cooperative with you, your administration with them? I know we're both Democrats, but at the end of the day, sometimes we have to agree to disagree. Are you having a smooth sailing with them? And my second question is for congratulations, Jeffrey, for doing your new job as a colonel. I appreciate you, and I just want to ask you, for safety of our state of Arizona, what measures are you taking place? Because you got to assimilate them into the whole countries or 50 states. Can you elaborate, both of you, on what's about to come in the future?
Well, I think we're focused right now on this very specific piece of the whole immigration and border puzzle, Title 42, which, as I said at the beginning, has been a temporary solution to what is a permanent problem, and we need comprehensive immigration reform, which is an act of Congress, not something I can, sign an order and do. That being said, this is the specific issue we're focused on, and I think I've expressed my frustration with the federal government's response to something that we knew was coming, and we've said over and over again that we need a plan to address it, and just the information we're getting about that plan has been much less than adequate.
And we got Biden, President Biden, is okay then?
Governor Hobbs, I'm going to focus on the issue at hand here. We talk a lot about transportation, the flow of people across the border. What about drug trafficking? I don't think we mentioned the words drug trafficking once during this press conference. Fentanyl is killing thousands and thousands of people, many Arizona residents dying from fentanyl. A lot of that comes over the border. A lot of it comes over Santa Cruz County's border. And I would think any border expert would agree that flow of people is often used to mask and distract from the drug trafficking. What are you doing to address the flow of fentanyl and other dangerous drugs coming across the border that may be coming across with this flow of people we're going to see in the next few days?
Yeah, so, I think when Secretary Mayorkas was here, he announced Operation Blue Lotus, which in its first week got 900 pounds of fentanyl from coming across. So we're in part of our request to them was to continue that operation. And our law enforcement is working with the federal agencies on that issue. And we know that folks who are trying to get these substances into our country are using this humanitarian crisis to exploit people and make that happen. So it's certainly part of our focus.
And I can't help but notice, no disrespect to Sheriff Manos, he's a great guy, but you don't have any border sheriffs here. Yuma County's not on the border.
Yes, it is.
We have the largest border of any county in the nation with Mexico.
All right, great. Next question. Governor, you knew this was coming. You knew that Title 42 was coming. Sorry, excuse me. You've been going around. You haven't picked me. Told me you were going to pick me. Coming out. You vetoed, despite the fact that you knew this was coming, you vetoed a number of border security bills, including, to build up his question, bills to strengthen penalties for drug trafficking like fentanyl. Why did you pick now? Why did you pick when Title 42 is about to end to finally say, you know what, I'm going to get serious about the border?
Thanks for asking that question. This certainly is not the first action we've taken on Title 42. As I said from day one, we have been focused on this issue. We've been meeting with community leaders, both publicly and privately, with listening sessions, and we're in more than daily communication with folks on the ground to address what we need to do to respond to this crisis. We knew it was a crisis that was coming, and we've been planning for it since day one.
Why not use Arizona State power
bills to be introduced this afternoon? Can you talk about your office's role in negotiating those proposals, and are you satisfied that what's coming later this afternoon would get your signature at your desk?
We've been meeting with Republican leadership and Democratic leadership for a couple months now to negotiate what you'll see in the bills that are introduced this afternoon. I knew from day one that to get a budget over the finish line, it had to be bipartisan. We are going to have to give some things up. The Republicans are going to have to give some things up, and I think you'll see that in the bills that come out this afternoon.
All right, everybody, we're going to do a last question.
Can somebody speak to how many Arizona Guards soldiers are at the border now? Like, we've talked about adding more, but how many are there now?
I think we can get back to you on that number.
There are some?
Mhm.
I'll get you that number. Yeah. All right, thank you, everybody. We're going to call it wraps. Appreciate your attendance. Please be in touch with either myself or the team if you have any follow-ups, further questions. I know there's a few things where we said we'd get back to you. Just shoot by.
The podium says you have till 11.